Welcome to the MatriArch Podcast, a sisterhood of legendary Black queens in the making, speaking about real issues, questions, thoughts, ideas, lessons, and cultivating future experiences. So let's get our crowns, wine, slippers, and start the conversation. Hello and welcome to the MatriArch Podcast. This is Ashley Washington, your host, and we are here with Ritchie of My Body Vitality. He is changing lives, changing fitness as we know it and can see it. He has been featured in Fox. He's been featured in Digital Journal, International Business Times, and The Times. So we are so blessed to have him here on the MatriArch Podcast. And we are wanting to share your story and his mission that aligns with MatriArch and just making sure that we are living a healthier, better life. So thank you, Ritchie, for being with us and just empowering the men and women that you do every day. So could you tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Just most appreciated you having me here. It's such a pleasure just talking with you. I get to share my journey, a little bit of my story. So I think back to what I do is I'm a transformation specialist. I kind of want to keep it that way. And it's more about helping, I think, people over 30s and elite performers to just perform at their best and show up as their best. Especially when it comes to the age of, be it when it comes to age of 30, or what we find is we always have these obstacles that come in our way, be it the fact that metabolism is slowing down a little bit, demands, in the case of life demands, come into play. And these are the kind of struggles that I face myself, starting off in my career and as a parent. And this is a message that I share and help people sort of like get through how they can actually navigate through the same challenges that I face myself.
Love that. And I completely agree with you. And I know we've spoken before about just what it is to be sort of in that time frame or phase of your life, right? We start out with spring, go into summer, fall, and then winter throughout the duration of our lives. And what's important about the summer is that it can get really hot. And when you're, at the age of 30 to 40 in particular, which is what you pinpoint, what I find interesting is that you're not only trying to raise your kids, get your professional life in order, your parents are aging, people around you are going through different experiences. So all of that stress and all of that life just kind of hits you at once, and you just wake up day by day and you're like, hey, what am I going to do today? And your fitness and your health aren't necessarily at the top of what it is you are doing. And a lot of times we just kind of put ourselves back to, on the back burner, to be quite honest. Particularly as mothers, we are, just kind of filling everyone else's cup and trying to make sure that, everybody is okay. And if everybody's okay, we're like, whew, okay, we've gotten through that day. In addition to whether or not your marriage, we have a lot of women in our groups. Unfortunately, some of them are going through a divorce and or have gone through. So it's a mixed bag, and trying to keep your health at top peak, and it doesn't even have to be top peak. It's just where it doesn't get away from you at that point. You're just managed and control at that point. But how can we help, or how can you help us just basically get to that understanding of, hey, this is what we should be doing to start our day. And this is how we can just basically, go from here as far as health and fitness.
Yeah, I think it starts with actually making a decision to make change. I think, Ashley, it starts with that. And having a depth enough reason. I'll just give a bit of a background, I think, to myself, how I made this shift, because somebody once said change can be necessitated by two things. It could be through desperation or inspiration, right?
Hmm.
And for me, it was very obviously, it was desperation. Reason is, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like the person I saw in the mirror. Not so
Hmm.
much about the aesthetics or the look, right? It went beyond that. I didn't like the way I did show up for my
Hmm.
loved ones in the case of family. I didn't like the way I was showing up for my kids. I did not like the way I did show up for my employers, right? And to be honest, Ashley, I was scared. I was scared because I've got health conditions that run in my family. And at this rate that I was going, it was not looking good for me, right? And for me, the desperation drove to me finding, I came across this writing. It was by Bob Proctor, if I remember correctly. It says something to this effect: you can either be living in a problem or living in a solution, right? And for me, it was very obvious I was living in a problem. It was
Right.
time to find a solution. Now, I did reach out for help because at that moment in time, I had that reason for me to seek help. But the solutions that were out there did not suit my purposes. One, they required things like me spending hours in the gym, right? Um, and at that moment in time, yes, I'm a young parent. I got kids, and for mothers, as you indicated, it's even a lot more demanding.
Hmm.
I had a career in banking at the time. It was very demanding. It took a lot of my time. So there was that friction, my lifestyle and my fitness demands or my health demands. So it was easy for you to take a back seat, right?
Hmm.
So having that deep enough reason prompted me to go back on the drawing board and studying research. That's the reason I studied all this stuff, be it being a certified PT, metabolic conditioning, to sports nutritionist, so I can help myself because I had deep enough reason to make that change. So what I'm teaching now, or what I'm sharing, is a combination of over 10 years of tried and tested methodologies that later on I got to find out it's not only me who is finding or struggling with those issues. The other
Hmm.
parents, the other busy professionals who are struggling with the same issues, they do understand and appreciate the need of health and fitness, but they just don't have the time. I don't have the time to do these things. I don't have time to go into the gym for an hour. I'm a mother. I need to take care of my kids. I come from work. I go home. I have to cook dinner.
Hmm.
What time will I find to go make dinner? You got single mothers indicate times going through divorce. COVID, did really do
Yeah.
numbers on a lot of people, a lot of families. How do you then prioritize your health and fitness?
Hmm.
One, it's again, it goes back to having enough reason. So back to your question is having a deep enough reason, because that is what is going to sustain you going forward, because it's not going to be easy. Look at, say, New Year, right? You
Hmm.
got gyms are packed, oversubscribed, people sign up. Come March, this time of the year, right? Numbers have slowly like gone away. You could go to the gym, it's pretty much empty. Does
Hmm.
it mean those people that signed up in January don't still want to get in shape? I think they still do want to get in shape. What has changed is what? Priorities, right? So we need to have that deep enough reason as a starting point before you can even go into technicalities, right?
Agreed.
Once you get enough reason, I need to make a shift that is more sustainable, then you can look at the capabilities, how you build that, be it to reach out for help. There's so much knowledge out there right now. We live in this internet age where there is plenty. Or better still, get yourself a coach that can actually guide you and sort of like direct you for bring about those efficiencies and getting what you're looking to achieve in your fitness.
Yes. And I think you hit on quite a few key points there, right? So, number one, just kind of back to your journey, um, health in the Black community is, diabetes is rampant, um, heart, uh, high blood pressure, heart disease. And so, making sure that we are taking care of our bodies in a way that is beneficial not only to ourselves, but our families and our community. Taking care of yourself is actually a community goal, right? We no longer want to, be a part of these statistics. Recently, we had a Chiefs cheerleader, Crystal, and she actually passed 3 days after her child was born, and it was due to preeclampsia. And I know so many women, whether it's been they had the hardship of preeclampsia, or they've had preemies or what have you, and it is just in a way that is detrimental, right? And obviously, sometimes you just have the genetics of that, right? And you can't control it. But what you can control, I think, is the wake up call that we may all need. So I don't know who may be listening or what have you, but this is so, so important. And thank you for sharing that it wasn't only for you, but the history that you had in your family. So thank you so much for sharing that. In addition to what it is you were talking about, just getting to the why, right? Why are you working out? It has to be deeper than your front facade, right? We want to go deeper. They say beauty is skin deep. Well, we want to make sure that your heart is healthy, your kidneys are functioning because you're drinking enough water, things of that nature, that just all wellness is all around. So making sure that your mindset is in a good place to even start to do this and keep you going is a great, great place to start. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just, your why can be your children. It can be, your spouse. And I had shared this with you earlier. I could not be with a person that didn't work out. And in your union, when you're with someone, it's almost like I am taking care of myself so that I can take care of you. And later on, you're not obligated, barring, someone getting hit by a bus, those are exceptions, but you have to take care of yourself and not become it is a part of your responsibility to your spouse that you take care of yourself. And that is something very, very serious, and making sure that you know your why, what's going to carry you through. Even, hey, I woke up, it's cold, it's rainy. I really don't feel like going to the gym. Hey, maybe I can do some squats inside or push-ups or what have you. But just making sure that you're doing something that can really just benefit your overall health and wellness is just where we're at. So thank you for sharing that. Now, is there anything else that we should be looking at as far as drivers? What have you seen the most success from in, the people that you coach and help get the results that they're wanting, but also just feeling good about themselves? What are you finding are their drivers mostly?
Well, I love that. And just to add to what you're saying earlier, it just reminds me of that thing about taking care of oneself. You're pretty much taking care of everybody else around you. It's almost like when you jump on a plane, right? They tell you, like, when the oxygen mask comes down, you take care of yourself before you help somebody else. Because when you help yourself, you're better placed to help everybody around you. Right. Yeah. And back to your question as to some of the drivers, I would say it's more about having that conscious, deliberate effort, because it won't come naturally.
Mhm.
It's about making that conscious, deliberate effort. And one thing I've found that is effective, be it for mothers and for busy people, we find ourselves, because there's that conflict. How can we remove that friction so you can continue on that trajectory to health and fitness? And one of the ways to do about it, again, it takes about that conscious, deliberate effort to understand how your lifestyle, how you can, because fitness is there to enhance your lifestyle,
Mhm.
but not take away from it. And for the most part, why people are not consistent, why we're not consistent with their health and fitness is because there's that friction that's created. So some of the things we can look at is studying more. Like in my case, I teach. If it's conflicting with your lifestyle, say because you've been told you need to go work out an hour, spend an hour in the gym, that's going to create friction because you got kids to take care of, right? You got dinner to make, you got work to do. All those kind of things that might come into play. You got just a busy career. How about you just start off with maybe 10 minutes, right? In the case of workout, then build up on that. Because for the most part, I think, and I'll just tell you this example. I was speaking to bankers. I'm from a banking background, and I was speaking to bankers, and I asked them what comes to mind when you talk about health and fitness. And predominantly what came out there was, oh, a six pack and all that kind of stuff. Right. And, but then I was like, what if I told you that when you exercise, you're 20% more productive? Right. Because, Richie, I do understand the benefits of exercise and fitness, but I don't have the time. I need to put food on the table. I was like, that's counterintuitive because if you are sharp in body, if your body is right, you're going to put more food on the table. Then
100%.
I'll go in things like, say, you're 20% more productive when you work out. You can talk about a cognitive function because people look more about the aesthetics, but it goes way beyond that. On mental health, right? Mental health studies have shown, talk about GABA glutamate, which are brain neuro, the brain factors. It was found that when you exercise, right, levels of GABA and glutamate are elevated. And the interesting bit is there was a study that was looked at for people that were in a depressed state, and it was found levels of GABA and glutamate were depressed or suppressed. And exercise is pretty much a natural remedy for that.
Wow.
Then you can talk about things like dopamine, serotonin, which are released when you exercise, which pretty much counter. Because when you are in a stressed environment, it's very busy. The likelihood the stress is rife.
Right.
That is likely the case. That's cortisol elevated. And how do you counter that? You need what are referred to as happy neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin to counter that, which comes naturally with exercise. Right. Then we can talk about BDNF, which drives neurogenesis, which is the reproduction of brain cells. When we exercise, it was found that neurogenesis or BDNF is enhanced threefold.
Wow.
Exactly. So it's things like this which are not articulated enough, right? And we concentrate more on the tools. I want to be more productive. I want to make more money and neglect the very operator, which is our bodies, right?
Yes.
Which is the genesis of my book, which is Body and Bank. Not so much about your bank account. Yes, it could be in the literal sense, but it's also as a metaphor. Whatever bank we're looking at filling, be it a productivity bank account, your fulfillment bank account, your energy bank account, it starts with our bodies being right. Right.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so it's one, understanding the core aspects of what fitness and health brings to our bodies. Right. Once we understand that, then we can look at how can we fit it into a lifestyle. These are the drivers, because the drivers is pretty much, again, I'll go back to mindset, because it's all about mindset. I can give you all the strategies and how to work out and how to eat well, but if your mindset is not lined up with that purpose you're going after, that will be very short-lived.
Yeah,
So it's about, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Richie. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go.
I was just going to say, I think that is a really key component to the drivers that we need to have, which are just how are we looking at our bodies? And I love that you mentioned body to bank, because what it does is it's like, hey, is this ATM full? Can you pull money out? And if not, it's depleted. And so you have to put in the work and put in, all that you can do. And I love the fact that you say start 10 minutes at a time, because sometimes it can feel daunting because the images that are shown to us on a constant basis of what looks quote unquote good is, that's, you mentioned a gentleman mentioning the six pack and,
Mhm.
the ideal form and body. And that may not be for everyone, but starting at 10 minutes and saying, hey, I can do the 10 minutes, let's bump it to 20. And I don't know what your intervals are, but,
Yeah,
I think that starting does not have to be so overwhelming or so big. It's the small steps, it's the
exactly.
discipline that really carries you through. So, thank you so much for mentioning that. That is something that really is missing. I feel, you were talking about, how in January you go to a gym, and I never go in January. It is
Yeah,
just too packed. And I know it'll, kind of dwindle down
yeah,
February, March. So that's really when I try to ramp up in particular. But what I find interesting is, why are those gym members or sellers not saying, hey, let's figure out what's going to keep you coming in, right? That way they don't have the trend of influx, and then and then summer's about to come, then they have another influx, partially because January is like, oh my goodness, I've got to get, all this turkey, ham, and everything else that I've eaten, macaroni and cheese, off of me. But at
yeah.
the same time, it's just so important that you start and make those incremental changes. So thank you so much for talking about that.
Like what you're hearing from the MatriArch podcast? Guess what? There's more. So make sure you check it out on matriarchmom.com. We have a place for you to join our sisterhood and to be a part of something great.
And with fathers, Black fathers,
Yeah.
oftentimes, we're like, oh, well, the woman's got to be this and that. But I really want to highlight Black fathers in this instant being a driver as well, and saying, hey, health matters to our families and to just the longevity of our families. Because so often, I have men in my family, I don't know how to get them to care, right? And it has to be from within, what you're talking about. So, do you have any tips for us, daughters, nieces, and how we can just help us help themselves, I guess, in a way?
I love that, Ashley, because I've been such a big proponent of what I call, we always talk about generational wealth, right?
Mhm,
But we don't talk enough about what I refer to as generational health, because that's the
mhm,
starting point. We need to start with generational health. And how do we do that? How do we build that? Because for the most part, we need to rid of this generational myopia.
mhm,
We're very myopic when it comes to our generational health, and that starts with us, right? Because it's so sort of like we're so boxed in
mhm,
the now and don't look beyond us. Um, and for us to change or to make that shift or to change that script, it starts with us being aware that, as be it parents, be it dads, be it mothers, that the young people are very observant. They're very impressionable to actually what we
mhm.
do, and they watch what we do. Not so much what we say, but what we do. And our behaviors do matter. How we carry ourselves, how we eat, right? How do we expect them to carry on that legacy of being healthy when we spend our time just sitting on the sofa and just eating junk food, right?
Mhm.
We have to show that example. We have to be an example. And with that, that is carried on, right? And that's what the problem is. I think the problem is us not doing enough or being aware enough of our surroundings. And by our surroundings, I mean being aware of our kids and how they see us live our lives.
Mm.
So be it working out, like in my kids, I try to sort of like get him in, right, in the case of working out, you just build up on that, making it fun, right?
Mhm.
Take him for a walk. It could just be a walk. So it becomes ingrained.
Mhm.
And it's no longer a chore, right? It becomes ingrained. It's almost like a habit. And that they're going to thank their future selves, right? Their future selves are going to thank them for that. It could be like in a case of cooking, them being part of, say, your meal prep. Can you help me just cut off this vegetable or something like that? Those little things like that, they see you do it and they're part of it, right? It starts being ingrained. So it takes that awareness and seeing beyond our current generation, but seeing how this tradition, say, I want to be fit, I want to be healthy, I want this generation to carry on with this attitude. How can I pass this on? It's not just about the money or whatever I'm going to leave behind. I need to leave that generational health that's going to carry forward for years to come, because that's the biggest legacy you can actually leave your kids with.
100%. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. You hit the nail on the head with that, because showing them, well, when you're talking about those walks, that is ingrained in them as a happy time. So often when people are, they have the idea of working out, it is, with my back's gonna hurt, or I'm gonna have pain here, or what have you. And then you're like, no pain, no gain kind of thing.
Oh
And you're like,
yeah.
got to get over it, right? But if, you ingrain children to basically say, hey, this is how you need to live, right? This is a part, I remember walking with dad or walking with mom, and we just had a good time. So I want to walk, right? And that's the subconscious, but it is ingrained in them to have those healthy habits. And if it's just a walk, I hope and pray that they walk for the rest of their lives, right? At
Exactly.
least I know that they'll be doing the minimum,
Yeah.
which, gets back to that sort of starting at 10 minutes. So health and making sure that we're balancing the mind while we're doing this is a huge, huge opportunity, at whether it be the table or walking outside, that we can really, really start to change the narrative of what our health and longevity look like as a people, as Black people. I had heard this lady, and I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge now. Too much sugar in a child is represented as a cavity. Too much sugar as an adult is represented as diabetes. Too much sugar in an older person is dementia. So we really need to start to change this narrative of what is good, what is healthy for us, not only from a health standpoint, but also at the table. And knowing that mothers and fathers are providing the nourishment and the health and the physical, we really have to start being mindful of that and looking at the full wellness, right? And there were talks about what is the longevity of the next generation. So millennials are having children, Gen Z is starting to have children now. What does it look like for them? Hopefully, they don't have to take care of us in the way in which we have to take care of our parents, because they just didn't have the education, they have the knowledge, you know, uh, or a lot of things, but that's a whole other conversation. But trying to hone in and make sure that they do not have the same pressures that we have, in whether it being taking care of a relative that is older. So I thank you so much for not only mentioning that, but just talking about how we can really start to turn the page and turn our minds into not what a magazine says as far as a six pack, but how we can really show our children what it is to live healthy by taking the first step ourselves. What I want to ask next is some of you as a father with your children. to help them just get healthy, be healthy, live healthy, and what it is you do with them.
Yeah, for the most part, I think it can be quite hard, especially like in my case, I got teenagers. Yes, it can be quite challenging at times trying to drag them out and get them out. It's, but I think it's trying to find something fun, be it maybe going for a walk. I just mentioned last Easter. It's been Easter last weekend. I took them out. We went to Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of a trek there. So in the case of the walk and all that, it's just little things like that. So you can incorporate something fun, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's about them being active.
Right.
Because I'm a big believer in case of movement. It doesn't have to be sort of a workout in the gym, but it's about how do you bring about activity. I always tell
Mm-hmm.
my clients that, you know what, you don't get energy, right? You generate energy.
Right.
And you generate energy by what? By movement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things like that. I go to gym at home. At times I bring them in. So it's fun stuff I teach them. Could be just a 5-10 minute workout. Again,
Okay.
it's not supposed to be anything sort of like crazy that it puts them off. And that's the whole thing, because guess what? You try and force them to work out for 20 minutes, half an hour, or longer than that. Guess what? It's going to put them off.
Mm.
But how do you just bring them in? This is pretty much almost like indoctrinating them in the idea of health
Right.
and fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes, in the case of like slow doses. And for me, like I bring them in, like we have a workout. I go to martial arts background as well, so at times I teach them that. So it's more of a workout, but then we bring that, incorporate that in there. Yeah, it's simple things like that, but encouraging them as well in the case of like taking walks and letting them understand the benefits of exercise and fitness,
Mm-hmm.
because it's them understanding the why or the reason why they're doing certain things, or why they should exercise, or why daddy exercises,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how I feel and that show up, and tell
Right.
them pretty much the opposite if I did not work out or exercise, right? So they can
Yeah.
actually sort of like look at it from that perspective. So yes, you can look at it from a logical perspective
Mm-hmm.
with logic, but also in practice, and involve them in different activities, but also not overwhelm them too much that it
Okay.
puts them off.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good tip. And kudos to you for having teenagers.
It's not
um,
easy.
that's a whole other segment, but I think right now with, the social media and trying to, I guess, kind of get them not necessarily off the couch, but wherever they may be, but on their phones, is one challenge. But I like what you say as far as just making sure it's something that they like and making sure that, they are feeling heard, right? I always said as a child and as a teenager, I would never forget what it was like to be in that stage of life. And so, in particular, in my teenage years, not necessarily that I wasn't into things, I feel like I was into a lot of things, but fitness was not at the top of my thought process. I was like, oh, what about beta team or this club or going to
Mm.
this art exhibit, things of that nature. So I think a focus on how to play,
Yep.
have a good time, making sure it aligns with whatever. Hey, if they're playing, I'm going to date myself here, Mario or Zelda, 007 when we were growing up, whatever they're playing now,
Yep.
I have no idea. Um, just incorporate that somehow, right? Like, it's just
Exactly.
interesting to children, well, I shouldn't say teenagers, that age group, they just want to be heard and be seen. So do the things that they like to do is what I've gleaned from my experience.
I like
And
that.
just making sure that they are really supported supported in a way of being their own individual self, which is a part of their growth as well, and letting them know that that's okay. It's like, hey, you like Minecraft? Okay, that's fine. How can I support you in that? Is all that they really want to hear. I don't have teenagers yet. Mine are 3 and 6. But so when I get there, I will try to keep that in mind with all the raging hormones.
You got a
um,
short window. Make the most out of it.
yes. One of my girlfriends was actually telling me her 10-year-old was actually
Yeah.
in becoming she's a teenager, but
Yeah.
she's getting into that. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's happening sooner than I thought. So that's definitely on
Exactly.
my radar. And thank you for reiterating that. I think a lot of people just kind of sneaks up on them. So that's definitely on my radar. But just making sure that we support them in all ways. And in this life that we live, I know that you live in the UK, we live here in the US, but those nuances of, colorism and racism, they still exist, and trying to make sure that they are heard so that they don't feel depressed or lonely or isolated is all the more important. And I feel like that's another avenue of, whether it be a punching bag. Hey, let's do punching bags today. I can tell you're upset. I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
You may not have the cognitive development just yet to say how you feel or feel comfortable. So let's just punch it out, So making sure that we allow those avenues, whatever they are, is super, super important. So thank you for sharing that. I also want to kind of get into not only as you age, but after, we don't live forever in any phase,
Yep.
right? It's just change, and inherently is the world that we live in.
Yep.
But as we age, what are some of the things that you would recommend that we take care of the most? Is it back? Is it abs? Is it, what have you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But I just want to add on to what you just said
Oh,
about the
yeah, sure.
kids, because I think I love that so much in the case of how the kids want to be heard, right?
Mhm.
Because I think we are in this privileged, generation right now. You talked about social media earlier. I can remember. I'm old enough, I think, to remember talking about age right now. I remember. I'm old enough to remember when there was no internet and there was no
Mhm.
social media. Right
Yeah.
now, the problem is about being heard and communicating. It may be at times a challenge to be able for us to communicate because, from our background, and empathize with the young people because it's the only generation they know.
Mhm.
Whereas in our case, we are in this privileged situation where we can sort of appreciate both worlds. But
Mhm.
how do we bridge that generational gap and communicating so that we just don't get stuck or have our blinders come down, right? That it's my way or no way, right? But
Mhm.
how do we communicate that so the young people can empathize with where we're coming from and we can empathize from where they come from. So I
Mhm.
think that is quite key. And I find that to be something that I have to actually make a conscious, deliberate effort to do. It doesn't
Yes.
come naturally. I have to remind myself every time that tell you what, I come from a different generation and their generation. So
Yes.
I need to
100%.
think I I need to think differently. Yeah,
I
but
agree.
yeah. But back to your question as we age, I think this is something I've been in my case I'm very big on. Um, um, if people that follow me, for the most part, I'm all about helping over 30s rev up the metabolism, right? So they can pretty much reignite, their youth, right? Have more energy, and because we can do it, and there is just a few things that you can do from that perspective. I think one key area that tends to happen as we get older is there's a process called sarcopenia. It's just a natural the loss of lean muscle mass as we get older
Mm.
from about the age of 30 or so. They say studies are very different on that. And lean muscle mass is actually key for a lot of things and how we show up, be it our strength, our metabolism, and all that kind of stuff. So as we get older, if there's one thing I can point to, that we need to incorporate to help us level up and pretty much almost like reignite, the youth is one, in the case of strength training, because at that moment in time, because we're losing lean muscle mass, how can we replenish that? So incorporate some element of strength training in a way. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a sort of like a bodybuilder or anything like that. It's just about, it could be body weight, resistance training, but some resistance training so you can build up that lean muscle mass. You can build up some strength. Another bit is nutrition. We tend to skimp on protein. Protein is key for what? Building our lean muscle mass so we can maintain that posture. Because as we get older as well, our posture and all that goes. So how can we maintain that? Protein is key, and we should aim to consume anywhere between 0.75 to 1 gram per pound of our body weight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is key. But you find that we skimp so much on protein.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to overestimate how much protein protein intake we consume, and tend to underestimate how much carbs that we consume. So if there's two things I would look at, I think it's those two elements. In the case incorporating some strength training, so to speak, in the case of like and some and nutrition. Nutrition is key. And more so protein. We don't skimp on that.
Wow, I really so I lean heavily into the fruits and vegetables. And the proteins, obviously like beans and things of that nature, but I'm just not that much of a meat eater. I don't know why. It just does not, but all protein does not have to come from, meat substance.
Exactly.
But it is important. So can you give us some tips on that? And I'm more so asking for myself. Hopefully some other people can benefit from this question, but what sources of protein are there that are meat and meatless?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got clients that are vegetarian or vegan, and we got. So it's a wide variety. And the way I teach it in my case is about finding what you enjoy the most, because it's all about at times with ease, especially if you're busy. So you're a busy mother, you are a busy professional. At times it's just about picking, how can you, I would recommend maybe just picking, maybe could be like 3 to 4 protein that you enjoy the most, that you can then cycle around. And that could be anything. Say if say you're a meat eater, it could be things like say lean chicken, could be lamb, could be beef, whatever it is. Then for non-meat eaters, things like say for ladies, I think things like say tofu, those are kind of good sources of actually protein. Then you can also supplement with, and again, I just need to qualify this because I believe more than 50% of your nutrition should come from real food, right? Because there is a lot of noise there, like you need to take protein shake, you need to take that. That is just a supplement, right? It's just that. You don't need it, but it's only in the event that, because tell you what, like say if somebody weighs 200 pounds, right? When I look at 1 gram per pound of their body weight, they have to at least consume about 200 grams of protein in a day. That's a lot of food.
That's a lot.
Exactly. So normally how that works is then say if it's just too much food that you can't consume from real food, then you can supplement the balance with say a protein shake.
Right.
It's things like that. It's just about being aware of that fact. So yeah, so there is a lot. There's fish, fish. So there's such a wide variety of protein that you can take. Like fish is good. Beef, name it, chicken, turkey, name it. But for if you're non-meat, things like say tofu is actually pretty good. A source of protein. You got things like lentils.
Yes.
There's some sorts of protein in there. Yeah, exactly. So there is, it's such a wide variety. You just need to just sort of like, you can just Google search that as far as um, then maybe look at the foods that you enjoy. You can find list of maybe protein content. Then just ensure you hit those numbers. That is the key. It's about hitting those numbers. But as far as in the case of restrictions, there's so much. There's so much
Right.
out there as far as in the case of protein source that you can actually enjoy.
I love that. And I think that, you know, when we are looking at what we put into our bodies and trying to get as much protein as possible, I think that there is a constant pressure to just eat, you know, like you see like the bodybuilders on social media where they're just like pounding 10 things of chicken, 12 eggs in the morning and all of those things. So that's exactly why I wanted you to kind of lay that out, not only for women, but also for men, because when you look on social media, you're like, oh my gosh, how could I possibly eat all of that? And thank you for saying that the protein shakes are a supplement. It's not real food. It doesn't come out of the ground. It doesn't, you know, it is made in a factory from remnants of real things. So, and I always say the farther away you get from the farm, the more potential danger there is. And I don't know if you've been seeing some of the Takis that Takis are the chips that some of the parents here, I don't even know if they're in the UK, but some of the chips that they are giving their children. And I immediately looked at the back and the sodium, and I think I may have picked up lime something. I don't know exactly the name. It had 520 grams of sodium. I was like, there's no way I would immediately be dehydrated even eating one chip. So, you know, I know that we want to give our kids treats, but I am just not for sorry Takis. I just have to say that. Or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's just at the detriment of health. So thank you for telling us that we really need to do our nutrition with protein, but also, you know, with the strength and retention, because those elements are just so important. But we look at more and more things being manufactured, whether it be chips or whatever. It's just getting way too far away from the farm. And I'm really about nutrition that is on the outside aisles of the grocery store. Anytime you go to an inside aisle, preservatives. I really want people to get that in their minds, because it's killing us and causing cancer.
Exactly. And that's a scary bit, actually, just mentioned there, because right now we got, in the case of like in the health field and in the medical field, we're making advances with all these stuff coming up in the case of AI and all that. But so is stuff like that, right? So many, like in the case of fillers in the foods, we're moving away from real food. And that's what's causing issues. So we might be advancing in one way, but digressing in the other way. So it's about, again, that awareness about how is it that we can maintain that and eating more real food as opposed to so much, you know, the junk which is out there.
Yes, I completely agree. But yeah, so with that, we just want to thank you, Ritchie, so much for your time. Thank you so much for all of the knowledge that you have given us, the inspiration, how to deal with teens, a little bit of that, and just sharing your journey with us. We definitely appreciate it. And we cannot wait for this to just light up our June and go from there. So thank you so much for your time and all that you do to keep us healthy in the world.
I appreciate you having me, Ashley. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, same.
MatriArch would like to thank you for listening to our podcast. Please visit MatriArchMom.com to continue the conversation and join the sisterhood of other legendary Black queens in the making.